What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Near and Far podcast. Today it is me and Ryan to start out with. Chad's going to join us a little bit later on. We are recording this on Thursday, November the 16th. We just got beat down by Oklahoma. We are getting ready to play. Who are we getting ready to play?
Cincinnati.
A rivalry game in the Big 12. According to Neal Brown.
Yeah,
this is our new rival.
Soon to be rivalry? Question mark.
Yes. They hope they're marketing that one for us.
Dude, we're trying anything we can to find a rivalry. Yeah,
fit in the Big 12. That's interesting. At first, when we first got to the Big 12, I was like, and of course, everybody wants Texas to be their rival. I'm not saying that we were Texas's rival, but those were the funnest games we had. I feel like where. Like the first few years we were in the Big 12, we always played Texas close. We upset them a few years. It really felt like we were going back and forth with them. I enjoyed playing Texas. I wish we were going to continue doing it.
Most balanced kind of slate, right? As far, I mean, there were a couple, the beat downs, but really is usually tight, close games. Yeah, I'm going to miss them. I think not Oklahoma so much.
So today we went official. We put together an agenda. And the reason for that is because if you watch the last episode, Chad and I both talked about, after the Oklahoma game, you're starting to feel like maybe Neal Brown's not the guy. And I think we just kind of want to lay it out today because there's a lot going on. There's Neal Brown and the possibility of him going 8-4, yet us not being happy with that, which is crazy to think about. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year we're going 8-4 this year, no way I'm saying that Neal Brown should lose his job, but I might make that case today. So we're going to make the case for and against Neal Brown. We're also going to make the case for and against Jimbo Fisher. He was let go from Texas A&M. We're going to talk about that and whether we would want to see him here, what the pros and cons there would be. Just that crazy situation as a whole. Ryan's down in Texas, so he can speak on that a little bit. And then we're also going to talk about who we would want to see as our candidate. If we fall into the Neal Brown should be gone camp, who would we pick to select us? So let's jump into it here, Ryan. Make the case for and against Neal Brown. Tell me where you're going to go there. I'm interested to see how you open up.
Please don't. Do I need to do both?
Well, no, you don't have to.
No, well, I probably could do both. And I will say I do not envy the position that Ren Baker is in right now. That's for sure. Because I think there was a lot of hope, I think, at the beginning of the year, probably for everybody, right, to come in and say, one way or another, at the end of this season, we should feel comfortable either cutting ties, and moving on, or Neal solidifying his position as a head coach. And we're, 6-4, 10 games in, 2 games left on the schedule. And I honestly couldn't tell you. I probably feel the same as I do before the season somewhat. I mean, it's such a mixed bag. Case 4 is this. If we win 2 games, and that's a big if, right, remaining on the schedule, it's challenging optically to cut a guy loose that went 8-4. I mean, potentially 9-4. And I think arguably if he goes 9-4, depending on who your opponent is in a bowl game, maybe that, can kind of help shift the balance a little bit. But man, talking with you guys last week and saying, I'm kind of content and we'll see how these next 3 games unfold. I don't think anybody certainly anticipated the just utter beatdown that Oklahoma placed on us. So, man, it's hard for me to argue for him because to me, it's just looking statistically, and some of the stuff was shocking to me. I'm sure it's the same for you, Dylan, if you looked at it. Kind of under Brown's tenure, never having been ranked, not a single week in the top 25, during his stretch is mind-boggling for a program that's had the level of success we've had, and not to act like we're, a blue blood and a kind of perennial top 10. But I mean, we're pretty well accustomed to having a presence in the top 25, at a minimum. To not have been ranked a single week during his entire tenure is just insane, really.
So I think we can just end the podcast right now because there's not a single stat that can overcome that. There's not a single pro for Neal Brown, in my opinion, that can overcome never been ranked since he's been here. And that's 5 years.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to swallow. And I mean, I think that's the biggest thing for me is it's incredibly challenging for me to try to argue for another year because it's a broken record, right? I mean, all the things that I would probably argue for another year are not really a factor of him as a head coach. It's more about what happens when you have a coaching turnover, right? In a transition. So like obviously attrition, you're starting from scratch again, potentially, especially with transfer portal now and NIL. Nobody wants to go through that, but at the same time, I feel like those are the reasons we probably went into this year to some degree, and we were late in the game, trying to make a decision on that with Baker coming in last year. But I mean, how long you can play that every year, right? You just keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, at some point, you got to rip the Band-Aid off, and I just embarrassment, right? That's what that game was, just an embarrassment. And
It really was.
and I mean, you could argue it's an aberration. I mean, maybe it was, but to not even be competitive and to look completely out of sorts on both sides of the ball and just not even really. The crazy thing about that game, and I know you and Chad may have talked about this, but to get the ball and go down and score a touchdown, okay, they showed up like we're ready to go. And then just a complete collapse from
Yes.
that point forward. It's
And
just unbelievable.
I want to see what you think about this because, I don't want to talk about Oklahoma that much, but the defense has gotten a bad rap all year. And to be clear, the defense played bad against Oklahoma. We didn't stop them. They punted 3 times. They've scored 59 points, okay? But when they muffed that punt and then we go 3 and out, that was our opportunity for our offense to apply pressure to them. And in my opinion, every time that our offense has the opportunity to apply pressure to the other team, like to put them in a position where they're going to have to score on every possession or to really come to the aid of our defense, it never really does in the big matchups that we've had this year. Because you can look at that and say our offense gave up how many points in the first half, but like if we score right there and tie the game up, that again it just puts pressure on them. And now their offense is coming back out on the field and being like, okay, we're in a shootout here, boys. We got to go. Instead of being like, okay, they come back on the field with a 7-point lead. They made a horrible mistake. They didn't pay any consequences for it. We still have a 7-point lead. Let's go and let's score another touchdown. I think that's a completely different mindset.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's crazy because I'm thinking.
So, yeah,
that scenario, it was almost like the football gods, right? Because that was the same scenario, right, that we had against, I think it's Okie State, right, where we had the kind of freakish muff punt where guy gets blocked into our guy. It was almost a carbon copy, like exactly the same. No flag on the play. We get the ball. You think like, okay, football gods are smiling down. Let's go. Like you said, put it in, put some pressure on, flip this game around. And then that it was just, I think we went 5 consecutive possessions of 3 and outs. I mean, and I hear you. It's like, as bad as the defense is, you can't put any good defense in a situation where they're constantly on the field with no break against a pretty potent offense. But getting back to Neal, it feels like deja vu, man. It's like it's silly to talk about the whole trust the climb, but it's like it was silly last year, right? To even have that moniker, like that moniker will work for you for like years, maybe arguably 1 through 3, but to even utter those words right after that is just ridiculous and laughable. And then the other thing that has bothered me this season, and I went back and looked at this because I felt like this was the case, is, and not saying he's made a ton of excuses, but I just don't feel a need in these games. Particularly, you lost, dude, like, what, 59-20? Is that what we were?
Yeah. 59-20.
To then, in the post game, bring up the kind of 4 consecutive stops right at the goal line and kind of complain to some degree about feeling like, we got in, they just didn't have the angle, and I can't believe you don't have a camera angle. Like, if you look at all these games that we've lost, he's had something to say about
I
the
know.
officiating in every one of the games. And it's like, okay, but you could do that in any game. Like it's just, I think I'm just over it, man. I'm really
It,
ready to move on.
that point in itself, it like okay, maybe I'm looking too much into this, but when you bring that up, and I noticed the same thing, it makes me. It kind of plays into that. Is Neil Brown? Does he have the it factor? Because what I see whenever he says stuff like that is that he is externalizing his failures, and in my opinion, like the most dangerous person to be around is like a leader who externalizes their failures and internalizes their success. I think that's just like the worst possible person that I think you could have leading a football team or in a leadership position possible. And whenever he comes out after being beat 59-20, and makes excuses like that, that's where my head goes. I agree. That's a very strong point against him.
Yeah, and
Um,
like I went back to see because you could pull up obviously all of his post game to just see what highlights or what hits were on, and in the games that we lost, particularly in games where we were kind of handily beat. This is what he said in the last game, and I don't even know honestly, like unless the presser question right is like, "What'd you see on that goal line stand?" Which okay, but I don't think that was the case, and if it was,
no,
then but he says. I thought we got in on first down on the goal line. I thought we got in on second down. And that's not a knock on officiating, but here we are. We're playing a national TV game. We don't have a goal line camera. Not one single goal line shot, whether the ball got over or not, which is amazing to me. I don't think we win the game. No shit, dude. Are you kidding me? Like he said, I don't think we win the game, but it's a hell of a lot more interesting. But I really feel strongly that we got in on first down for sure. Second down, it'd be nice to see. Like, come on, it just what are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about at this point? And I think you're right. I just don't think. I think he's a really good dude from
yep,
everything I understand. I think he fits into the West Virginia culture. He understands the state. He understands the blue collar nature of it. He's done everything he could do to connect with the fans and the people. I think he runs a clean program. I think all those things, but he's just not it. He just does
no.
not have it. And I don't think that's going to change. Whether we give him another year, or we give him 5 years. I just don't. I do not see us being, and not even elite, but just what we're accustomed to.
If he had the it factor, we would be in the top 25 at least some point over the last 5 years. So yeah, I mean, if I'm going into my for and against, you've named a lot of the against that I was planning on talking about. So we're on the same page there. For four, I kind of I kind of say the same thing too. Like the case for Neil Brown is that he's very likely to go 8-4. He loses to Cincinnati, which by the way is very possible. I looked up a little bit of their stats. If they don't turn the ball over, they've got like if you look at their stats in a vacuum, offensive, defensive yards per game, stuff like that, they have a lot of potential. Their problem has been turnovers. If they don't turn the ball over against us, they're very likely to beat us. So that just makes it easy, in my opinion. But it's very likely he's going to go 8-4. And if he does, can we at West Virginia? Are we really in a position to fire a coach that goes 8-4? Probably not. Okay.
I I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's interesting because if you look at Ren Baker when he came in, right, and the things he said, and granted he had to say all the right things at the time, right, but he's been pressed from the point that the decision was made that Neal was going to get at least another year to the beginning of the season to really different points along the way this season, depending on how we played week to week. Anytime Baker's got in front of a microphone, obviously people are very interested in what is that look like, right? Like what is your analysis? And he said repeatedly that it's not about the number of games won or lost. Now, you can say that, right? But I do truly think that it can't be, right? Because this 8-4, I think by all accounts, and not saying this is Neal's fault, right? You don't schedules are made plenty of years in advance, right? Nobody anticipated kind of, I think, the dip, at least relative to maybe the other half of teams that we did not get the draw for, right? In this kind of new larger conference where we're getting that split. But it's more about the direction of the program. That's what he's been saying, right? As far as the way he's going to analyze it. And is it, on the right trajectory? Is it right on the right course? I don't think you could say anything from this season. I mean, we could go out and put up 60 against the next two teams,
Yeah.
play in a bowl game against a decent team, and maybe do the same. And to me, that still doesn't change the trajectory, right? Because the
Right.
trajectory for me is evaluated based on the Penn States, the Oklahomas. Those
And
are
the
the
Oklahoma
people.
State. I would even throw
Yeah,
that one in there. Yeah.
for sure. Well, and especially for Oklahoma State to then get beat down by
Right.
UCF in the following week.
That's the thing, Ryan. You're saying you're gonna judge our program based upon playing Penn State and Oklahoma. Two good teams. Don't twist what I'm saying at all. Those are two good teams. Both of those teams have two losses. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like they're not undefeated.
Yeah, they're not
Like,
world
they're
beaters,
not
right?
going to play. It's very likely neither will play in their conference championship.
Yeah.
Like, we're not even talking that level of teams.
But I think that's why I'm like so dead set on the fact that, and again, I don't know that this will happen. And if you had to ask me right now and said, hey, which way do you lean as far as not what you think should happen, but which way, what do you think's gonna happen, right? Like from a assessment standpoint, I think he'll probably get another year, which makes me nauseated.
Oh, I can't
Honestly.
imagine it, man. I can't imagine. And listen, I'll never root against our boys and the team, but like there is, I'm not gonna lie. If we lost to Cincinnati, I would be miserable for like a day, 2 days. But once I recovered from that initial shock of losing to Cincinnati, probably the worst team in the Big 12, there would be a part of me that would probably be like, oh, this is over.
Thank God. Yeah.
Yeah, this is over.
Because there's no
but
way. I mean, there's just, I don't think anybody, any reasonable fan, if they were honest and were trying to be, you know, somewhat objective and not having maybe a bias one way or another from a Neal's perspective in this tenure, but nobody can tell me that our program is on a good trajectory. I mean, it's not been. I don't think this year has moved the needle at all if you've watched the games. I mean, yes, there's been flashes, right? But that's kind of been his whole tenure, right? We've had
yeah,
games where there's been flashes where and early on you thought, okay, this is the guy. Like this is the guy that we hired, right? This is why we hired him. Here's the flash. But when you're in year 5 and you're still getting just flashes, I mean, I think you've got enough of a sample size to know, like he's not your guy. He's
yeah, this
definitely
is who
not your
he
guy.
is.
Yeah,
And I think you're right there. I will say I do feel like we have shown some progress this year, but not like I think this is like what if he was going to be our guy, this is what we would have seen in like year 2, year 3, not year 5.
yeah.
And
I mean, this will be his best record, right? I mean, we went up
for
8-4.
sure. Oh yeah, not even close.
But here's what I'd say. I think if he ends up getting another year, it has more to do with the external factors than it does with his performance, if that makes
Well,
sense. So I think it's hey, we're going to lose guys. How many other, Power 5 head coaching vacancies are there that are going to need to get filled, that are going to be, ranked higher above us as a potential destination? All those kind of external factors where you go, is it the right time? I mean, to me, it's like, yeah, because we've been doing this now for at least 2 seasons, if not longer.
yeah.
You're prolonging the inevitable. In the meantime, less and less people are coming to games. I got to imagine revenue's down from just
It's got to be.
yeah,
We were the BYU game was a night home game on Saturday against BYU, which had a huge following. There were a lot of BYU people there, and there was 50,000 people there. So if that game's against Cincinnati, if that game's against Iowa State, there's probably 40,000 people there, something like that, 45. Yeah. So yeah, I it has to be down. I think the thing working against Neal Brown getting fired is that once Ren Baker does that, he's on the clock.
True.
So if he can, like, I would imagine in his situation, it would be very easy to be like 8-4. That gets me another year. Where if I fire him next year, completely justified, no worries. And then my guy comes in and now I'm on the clock. But if I fire a dude who went 8-4, like if we take a huge step back next year, that's already on. And what Gordon G's contract is through like 2026 or something like that. So he
Yeah.
might be thinking, if a new president comes in and I'm 2 years into a coach that I hired, if he's doing bad, does that jeopardize me? I just think it's going to be much easier for him to keep Neal Brown if he goes 8-4 than not. Again, Cincinnati might make this a much more interesting decision tomorrow based upon how that game goes, or Baylor. I think both of these games are very losable. We'll see how our guys bounce back. But the other thing I would say against Neal Brown is win-loss is one thing, but on the field, I'm not seeing the player development. I don't see where Garrett Green has gotten that much better in the last 3 years. He has shown, again, like you said earlier, flashes this year, but his touch with the ball, like you can't tell me that they couldn't recognize when he stepped onto campus 3-4 years ago that he had problems with his touch on throw. And show me where that improvement has gotten. He can still throw the deep ball good enough, but when it comes to the wide running back, easy outs, stuff like that, the easy layup throws, he just doesn't have the touch, and that hasn't improved at all. So that's the other thing I would throw out there. It's not just him. The wide receiver room has been a mess since he's been here. Something about whenever Neal Brown stepped on campus, our wide receiver play has been inconsistent is the best word you could possibly use to describe it. And
I
changed in
honestly
5 years.
I think you could make that same statement to some degree about the entire offensive side of the ball. I mean,
Yeah. Yep.
And that's the thing, is like that's his thing, right? That's his calling card. That's the reason we hired him. He's an offensive minded coach. And then to have such drop off, and I think too, like we were clearly pretty spoiled for a while between Rich in between Dana, who were two, I think, knock them however you want from a head coaching or otherwise perspective, but pretty good offensive minds. I mean,
Yes,
there's
for
never,
sure.
And so it's been such a dramatic drop off, I feel like. But
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. I mean, we had never been the guys, right, that went out and got 5 stars, rarely, if at all, ever. And even the 4 stars were rare, right? I mean, we were all about player development. And so you took your 3-star guys and you turned them into 4 or 5. You took, the guys that nobody else wanted and you developed the hell out of them. There has
Yeah.
been no player development, at least on the offensive side of the ball, I feel like, since his entire I mean, name somebody for me, and it's going to take you a while, probably it would me, but just name something you can think of that one he recruited, right, that he brought in, that left as a star, right? Or that's the thing. Defensive side of the ball, yeah, we've had some guys, right? Like we've had some performers, we've had some guys that have went on, but offense, which used to be our calling card, I couldn't name somebody for you. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
just drastically overlooking someone, but I mean, I think if you look at all of our production, you look at our guys getting taken in the draft, you look
Mm-hmm.
at our ticket sales, you look at everything to me is down. And I get
Trending
that
bad.
for a few years, right, on the transition. And if I hear one more time, it's almost like that, well, we had a tough job when we took it over, like the cupboard was bare. Come on, man. Really? And also, it's been 5 years. Like, that's no
Yeah.
longer viable excuse for you. Like, enough. And that's the way I feel when these post games, he's kind of, throwing dirt on a officiating call here or there. It's like you said, I think he's in his own head. I just don't think he's got, and maybe it works somewhere else, but I just do not think this is the guy that's going to have any breakthrough here for us. I
No.
think we're going to continue to just mire in this same awfulness until somebody rips the band-aid off. And man, it's
Yeah.
just I don't even know. And then if he stays, like, what does that mean? Because something's got to change, right? Maybe you don't change at the top, but does Jordan Leslie still have a job? I mean, there
Ooh,
has to be
that's a great
some
question.
repercussions. Like, he has been to a flaw fatal to his staff. I mean, loyal to his
Loyal. Yeah.
staff, to a flaw to him,
Yeah.
right? Because he has practically made very little, if any, changes of his own. I mean, he's had to make changes because of attrition or folks taking jobs elsewhere, but he has stuck by his guys through thick and thin, which is great for his loyalty. But I mean, it is self-inflicted at this point. So
Yeah,
if he
that's a
stays,
great point.
I don't see that there's no way in my mind where he can stay and there aren't some dramatic changes to the staff.
For sure. Yeah, Jordan Leslie's got to be gone, and I don't even know that. But I didn't realize this until the other day. He when talking about Jordan Leslie, he always says, a few years ago we had the number one defense in the country. Jordan Leslie didn't forget how to coach. He says stuff like that. But what I didn't realize is that was whenever Adai was the co-defensive coordinator, and Adai left and went to Miami. Remember, he took one of our defensive linemen with him. And ever since then, our defense has been going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So, could be 1,000 different things. We've had bad injuries there. The transfers
it's
have
been bad.
bad.
It's been bad. But that's the thing is, I think too, it goes back to the identity, right? And for better or worse, and I'll probably get all kinds of shit from people, but Dana had an identity. He knew what we were and who we were. Rich certainly did. And the commonality between both of those guys to some degree is if you look at them on the defensive side of the ball, they knew we were not going to be, an Alabama front, right, with a Alabama back end or an SEC level. We were going to have to go out and recruit guys that were athletes, that were under recruited, that were 3-star, run, some would argue, a very gimmicky defense, but put athletes in positions to make plays. And then, once or twice every 4 years, you're going to have a really good defense because they're going to be senior laden, right? And junior, it's experience, and that's going to win out, and that's going to be a good defense. But we are not, I mean, some of this is just reality, right? Of like who we are as a program and what we can do with people. And I feel like that's not something that Neal seems to quite grasp or understand or just embrace. I mean, to some degree, that's the thing. We embraced it, right? Like, we're not going to go get the 5-star guys, right? We're not going to get the blue chippers. We're going to take these other guys who work hard, play hard. We're going to put them in a position to make plays. And, we're going to be a little bit gimmicky on defense, but it works. And I don't feel like we've really had that. And then on offense, which I think used to be our calling card for the longest time, certainly from Rich forward, it's just awful. It's the inconsistency.
It's inconsistent. So I think we both agree, not Neal. We both don't think Neal is the guy. We recognize the tough position Rinbaker's in, but Neal's not the guy for us. So if not Neal, who? Okay, is it Jimbo?
Yeah, so you and I were texting earlier this week, and you said, and I think rightly so, right? You have to make that call, and you're 100% right there, right? I mean, this is a guy who has obvious ties to the state. Now, granted, that's an origin story, right? So let's not act like he's had any, ongoing or active ties to the state other than having grown up here. Which I think still plays a big part, but it's not like we've got plenty of other guys out there in the coaching trees, right, that have more active ties or have been more recently in the fold directly with the program that could be eligible, but nobody with certainly his resume. Now, if it was Nick Saban who was stepping away, that's a no-brainer. But yeah, I think you have to make the call. He has had a really hard time since he had Jameis Winston. He just hasn't had a quarterback. I mean, if you look since he won the national championship with Jameis, he has not been able to keep a quarterback healthy that is talented. And a lot of that's bad luck. But I mean, that was, he was kind of the quarterback whisperer. That's his thing. He's an offensive guy, right? And he's just not put up that production really since he had Jameis. And dude, I mean, A&M, we'll talk about this in a minute, but I think you're right. You have to make the call. And if he's interested and it's reasonable, I mean, that's the other thing that's very interesting about it is the dude's got more money than God now, guaranteed. I mean, he's got the Bobby Bonilla of, deals now where he's going to get paid guaranteed for the rest of his life practically. Although I've heard that's maybe being negotiated into kind of a lump sum to try to handle some tax related issues or other things. But still, he's not going to be working for money, right?
Right.
That shouldn't be an issue. Not that it was anyway, but maybe that might become a doable transaction, right? Because otherwise, we don't have the ability to pay that guy, right? Like what his
Yeah.
market is elsewhere. So you're trying
What
to.
he should do to rub it into Texas A&M is work here for a salary of $1 per year over the next 3 years,
He's the
and
Donald
then
Trump of coaches.
just have the most insane assistant
Pool
coaching staff
ever.
ever.
Yeah.
I'm talking like
Yeah.
Bill Belichick on defense. Bill Belichick's our defensive coordinator. Lincoln Riley is going to be our offensive coordinator. No, I think, okay, I do think you have to make that call. I personally, the best part about hiring Jimbo Fisher is that Neal Brown wouldn't be our coach anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, that's what really excites me about it. I don't think personally, I'm not real excited about. I think there's a lot of downside to Jimbo. Number one, he doesn't have to worry about money, so there's part of his motivation gone. That really concerns me. Now, I've thought about this a lot. A lot of these coaches are making so much money, though, that like at what point, like you're telling me Nick Saban's not coaching for money anymore either. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so a lot of that motivation's gone for them. But it's a bit weird. Like, he has to be thinking like, maybe I should just retire. Do you want to coach who's between retirement and and coaching more? I don't know that you really want that.
I mean, I think he's going to coach, right? I think he is obviously from that tree too, right? Like a Saban, disciple, but I think he's a guy that's, like you said, regardless of the money, that's just what he is and what he wants to do. And so I don't see him like, yeah, maybe he takes a year off, right? Or something in between, but I don't see him retiring and being out of the game. I think he's going to be right back at it. So why not make a run at it, and see what you can do here?
Would you like, are you saying like if he's interested and we can agree to terms, get him in a salary that fits for us, that you think that should happen?
I think you have to, honestly. I mean, I just don't know how you don't, because of, I mean, put it this way, put anybody else, right's resume up beside his realistically that you think we could get, right? Like who else out there has that resume that we realistically could have a chance at? Because I think really the play here is you're from West Virginia. Every time it's happened, it's been that call. But the interesting part of that, right, is this is all one-sided in my view, right? This is all West Virginia fans. This is all rumor. This is all speculation. Does anybody actually, has anybody gotten any real read, on Jimbo having any actual desire, like from a heartstrings perspective, right? Like to return to West Virginia? I mean, I just don't think,
Uncle Johnny has his number and texted him the other day, and he said he's interested. Okay, so
I mean, his name is Jimbo. I mean, there's nothing more West Virginia than that.
So, okay, let me lay out a couple of different things here. First of all, he went 45-25 at Texas A&M in the SEC. Like that makes Neal's record look pale. I mean, I think Neal's still one game under 500 at West Virginia. So 45-25 is nothing to sneeze at in the SEC West. That's for Jimbo. He can clearly still coach.
Yeah.
He's won a national championship. Like that's another thing. Like obviously that he's got to know what he's doing. He won a national championship recently, like not within the last 2 years, but like in this era of football, I would still say.
Yeah.
Here's where I start like going away from him. Okay. I think it was Chris Anderson that broke his recruiting classes down and looked at like the percentage of players on the field for Texas A&M that are either 4- or 5-star recruits. And they rank up there with the highest in the country. When you look at all the programs in the country and the percentage of the players on the field that are 4- and 5-star recruits, Texas A&M is up there in the top like 5% of programs with the Ohio States, with the Michigans, with the Alabamas. So he's clearly recruited well. But of all those programs that are up there, Texas A&M is basically performing the worst from a wins and losses standpoint. You look at all those other programs who are in that percentile, they're performing better from a wins and losses. Okay. Now, again, two of those teams that are in that percentile are probably in the SEC West with Alabama and Georgia, right? Those are both SEC. Georgia's not SEC West, is it? But at least I'm just saying, like, somebody's got to lose in that division when you're
Yeah.
playing everybody. So that's one thing I would throw at you. But what scares me about that so much is, like, if he's recruiting the best players and he still wasn't able to get over that hurdle at Texas A&M, what happens if he comes to West Virginia and can't recruit those players? Does that mean that, like, was the missing piece for him at Texas A&M? Was it something scheme wise? Is his offense outdated? Has he not adjusted with the ebb and flow of college football and changed his offense or defense enough to be competitive in this day and age? What happens if he gets to West Virginia, doesn't change his offensive scheme or whatever was going on in defense, and can't get those 4 and 5 star recruits?
Yeah.
And now we're just stuck with a coach whose scheme is outdated and isn't recruiting. And it's just not, I don't feel like that's going to go well. I feel like what we need and what has worked for us at West Virginia is a coach that can come in and has some type of scheme advantage. That was the case with Rich. That was the case with Dana to at least some degree. They both had offenses that would give us an advantage on the field if all other things were even. And then they had that it factor that allowed players to, work hard, play hard for them, and get us to win games and put us in a place to win games. So that's my concern with Jimbo.
No, I think it's a totally valid point and a legitimate concern. I mean, if you ask me, should we do that, right? Like, or would I support him being the head coach? I would prefer not to have him as our head coach because of all the things you've said. He also, it's had some issues off the field with some of his players. There's a lot of people, and granted, there's a lot of finger pointing about this, it's taken a long time to get Florida State back to being Florida State, which I think this year is, kind of uniformly the first year that's really kind of happened since the pinnacle of Jimbo's tenure there. And a lot of that, if you read a lot of the different articles and backstory, is the finger point is at Jimbo, that it's a state in which he left it in. And we'll see what, comes of A&M. I mean, if that's true, sometimes it takes somebody to get the ship righted, but sometimes it doesn't work out. And so I'm curious to see what that looks like. But I'd rather go a different approach. But I think at the end of the day, there's just no way, if it's reasonable, like if it's actually a chance to do that, right? And he's interested, the money's right, it's not outlandish, and he's coming with that resume. I don't know how you say no.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem.
It feels a little bit Bob Huggins-ish. Honestly, it does. The difference is that Bob Huggins left Kansas State on his own accord to come here because he wanted to be here, whereas this would be he got fired. So, but it does remind me a little bit of Bob Huggins-ish.
A little, yeah. I mean, I think the thing that would be that I think is lacking, right, is that all the connections being made. It's yes, he was born in West Virginia. Yes, he grew up in West Virginia. Yes, he went to college in West Virginia, but not WVU, right? I mean, that's the thing, is he's never had really a connection to the program. I mean, he did play, for Terry Bowden when he was at Salem. So there's that, kind of loose connection between, Bobby's son and the family, and kind of that, West Virginia connection. But it's not like he's been ever tied into or plugged into the university or the program. So
the rumor is that he was going to take the job whenever good God, how can I not think of his name?
Bill Stewart.
Bill Stewart got hired. Yes, that until they offered Bill Stewart the job after the Fiesta Bowl, that Jimbo was going to come here and be the next head coach.
Yeah, who knows, right? I mean, in all honesty, I would find that insanely hard to believe.
He was already the head coach and waiting at Florida State.
He
correct?
was.
They had already given him that title.
I believe so. Yeah, because when he got hired at Florida State, I think relatively short order of then too. Although maybe not. We'd have to maybe look at it. I mean, maybe that's a possibility, but the thing that lacks, right, is like the Huggins piece of it. Like, that's his alma mater, right? Like he played basketball there. That's he's been tied to it. He was rumored, like not even rumored. I mean, they tried to get a deal done right when he left Cincinnati. It just didn't happen. And so those storylines aren't really there for Jimbo. I mean, I still think, yeah, you've got this kind of nice thing you can wrap it up in. He's coming back to West Virginia where he's born and raised and went to college and all those great things. But to me, it's not the same, right? As somebody who maybe had ties to the university legit, played there, went to school there, right? That had not been a head coach there. Maybe he's kind of in the rising, who's been somewhere else. A la Rich. To me, this would be different if, okay, this crazy time machine, go back and Rich is never the head coach at WVU, right? But he's the head coach like he was at the Tulane's, right? And the offensive coordinator at Clemson, he has all the success. And then finally you woo him back to his alma mater, although he's already got a national championship on his resume. Then I feel like that's more comparable. It just feels like this is it's just so obvious that it can't be real. Does that make sense? Like, it's like the story everybody's always going, yeah, we should get him. I don't know that we ever had a legitimate chance to get him before. I feel like maybe now just because of the circumstances, but you still got to wonder, is he going to be satisfied with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, he might want to go to another SEC school just to rub it into Texas A&M.
Well, and, I think...
Chad!
What's up?
What up?
How's it
We're
going?
just talking we're making the case for and against Jimbo.
I think the flip side, Dylan, of your point you were making, though, which is interesting about, his just ridiculously jacked roster at A&M, which, to be clear, is a huge byproduct of NIL, right? I mean, it's practically like we bought the number one recruiting class via NIL, but there's something to be said for me too. Like, you could argue, and granted, it doesn't always play out this way when you look at like an Alabama and their recruiting classes, and typically the development you see from a Saban-led team, but 5 stars are 5 stars, right? I mean, let's be real. Maybe this comes up more in other sports, but there's kind of a diva aspect, right? And so sometimes, if you got a roster full of 5 stars, that might not work well. I mean,
Right.
It's a
Gwaltney. Jason Gwaltney. I cannot believe I remember Jason Gwaltney's name, but can't remember Bill Stewart's. Whoa. What is going on in my brain?
Jason Gwaltney, did he have like 1 touchdown? I feel like I can see it like at Maryland.
I think so. Yeah.
But, so I guess the flip side of that argument for him, if he was here, was maybe these players would be more moldable. Maybe they'd have better arguable work ethics than some of these other more highly recruited folks. But I mean, there's no doubt, right? I mean, it would be a major downgrade for him from a roster athletic perspective.
Yeah.
To go from just the stacked rosters at A&M to, we got a 4-star guy over here,
Yeah.
What do you think, Chad? Jimbo coming home?
I don't know. It's if you can coach a football team like Rich Rod did it without 5 stars.
Yeah.
Like Saban's had one of those years where he doesn't have a clear-cut star quarterback. They went through 3 quarterbacks this year before they've kind of settled on what's his name, Milroe, and he's playing better right now. But I feel like Nick Saban's a coach. Like he's working with what he's got. These guys started the season off a little shaky. He had Heisman Trophy winners like just stepping in every year.
Yeah.
Rich Rod, he didn't have that, but he turned those guys into football players. And if Jimbo's any kind of a coach, who's to say he couldn't do that? Like Ryan said, maybe too many 5 stars is the problem.
Yeah.
You get too many big egos in a room that could screw up your mojo. But I don't know. I mean, that's just with any coach that we bring in, whether they're an up and coming, assistant or from, a non-Power 5 school, you still, even if you won at that school, how many times have you seen coaches jump from team to team and their success doesn't follow them?
It seems like it's very few that can do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're asking a lot, to I mean, you can sit here all day long. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, say that's like every up and comer, right? Like it's the golden child of the non-power five, right? Who's like, this guy's done. I mean, that's Neal Brown, right? I mean, to some
Right.
degree,
That's Rich
right? It's like,
Rodriguez.
yeah.
To the majority of people, I know you can point to 1 year in Arizona. I think he had 10 wins, but that's Rich Rodriguez. You
yeah,
can say that about him.
Look at Chip Kelly. He was crazy at Oregon. Then he goes to the pros. Doesn't
he
work
get
out.
fired, by the way? Is that official yet?
I think they said after this weekend. The article I read said that if they lose this weekend, he's fired after the game.
He's fired before he can get off the
In the
field.
tunnel.
Yeah,
I'm almost more interested in Chip Kelly than Jimbo for the reasons I mentioned before. I do feel like Chip Kelly is a scheme first guy. Like he's going to bring a scheme here that is been proven to work. I don't know what's going on at UCLA. Clearly, it's not proven to work everywhere. But for some reason, Chip Kelly almost is a more attractive option to me than Jimbo.
There's a lot of, I mean, a big part of it, right? Is at least in college, and maybe not even college. I mean, think pros too. Is it's fit, and so like you're right. It's not always the ability to coach or the scheme. It's like sometimes it just doesn't work, And I feel like honestly, that's kind of like where I'm at with Neal Brown, where it's like, hey man, you might very well end up being a successful Power 5 coach, but it's not going to be here. Like I've seen enough, right, of this sample size, and it's just not working here.
yeah.
But yet, that's a good point. Like, think of guys. I'm trying to think of guys just off the cuff, but that have had success kind of at all their.
I got one for you.
Like uniform success.
Urban Meyer.
Urban Meyer.
Not in the NFL. Come on.
No.
That's
But
a
I think
different
that's
beast.
that's
Didn't have success there.
Yeah, that's a different beast, man. I don't know.
Urban
Even
Meyer.
good NFL coaches, like, I mean, look at Belichick. He's not having a very good go at it right now.
I mean,
Hey,
you take away Tom Brady.
What's Jim Tressel doing right now?
Selling
he's wearing
autographs,
sweater
man.
vests.
Yeah,
Sweater
I mean,
vests somewhere.
let's get that guy out of retirement. He's probably coaching somewhere, like being an
Have you
AD
guys
at some
tossed
high
around
school.
some
We've not delved in really to other prospects. I don't think we were just kind of on. We were getting ready,
Okay.
I think, to turn the page to
Urban Meyer is.
no.
Do you have to? Okay, but listen. Okay, listen. Urban Meyer is available right now. I think Urban Meyer is. There's a good chance he's the next Texas A&M coach.
But he said he doesn't have any desire. I don't know how much of that is true.
He lies straight to your face.
It's just like when he was retiring to spend time with his family right before he unretired.
Right. Oh, this was my one. I told him this was my one veto card. Ohio State. Yeah. No, Urban Meyer's not coming here. I think there's a good chance he goes to Texas A&M though. But okay. All right. Well, first of all, Chad, yes or no? Do you hire Urban Baker? Do you hire Jimbo if he can agree to salary? He's interested in coming here. Do you hire him?
I don't know, man. Like I said, it's like he may come. Say they do hire him. Say it came to that, and they did hire him, and he may come in and surprise everybody. You know what I mean? Like maybe he is a coach. Maybe he did have too much ego in the locker room. Maybe, with the players. It's you just don't know. I want to give you an answer, a yes or no answer, but I really can't because at this point, it's like, let's just take somebody that's passionate and that's going to, turn our program around. I don't care who it
Tony
is.
Gibson.
Tony Gibson.
Jimmy!
All right.
Let's
So
do
if
it.
not Neal, if not Jimbo, who?
Tony Gibson.
Okay.
This is the part, Chad, where you have to disclose your familial relationship with Tony Gibson.
No, it's a non-biased selection.
I mean,
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, if we were doing a real job search for the next coach at WVU, Tony Gibson would be one of the top candidates.
Oh, for
without
sure.
a doubt.
Nope. There's no question about that.
That video, man, I got hyped up watching that video. That was cool.
He had a big old chew in.
Oh, my
Yeah.
God. That dude,
That's what we need.
biggest
Yeah.
jaw ever. Always dogs. Get them dogs.
Yeah.
Here's who I would hire, Dylan. Anyone but Neal Brown. Like that's
Okay,
literally where I'm at right now. Where I'm like,
Okay.
you could name anybody being his replacement, and I'm going to be excited for at least a little bit about the fact that it's anybody but Brown coming back.
Yeah. So on the last episode, Ryan, I said Signetti from JMU. Since then, I feel like what's the difference between him and Neal Brown? You know, there's a lot of similarities there. I mean, Signetti at JMU, I do feel like has the record. Like Neal Brown was still losing within the Sun Belt whenever he got hired from Troy. He was still losing a couple games per year in conference. Whereas JMU is in the top 25. They're undefeated. They have College Game Day there this week. But I agree with you. I think if you can get a Power 5, somebody who's had success at the Power 5 level, that's got to be your first option. And the thing with Tony Gibson is he's no head coaching experience. That's the scariest thing with him. Like he checks every other box for me, but no head coaching experience. So what's that going to look like?
Okay. I printed off a list of
There's also
30.
Real quick, Chad.
Go ahead.
There's the other thing, right? Is, and you probably talked about this, right, Kirk Signetti, but it's the legitimate tie, right, to WVU. Like that's not, that's
played
not
here.
like right, exactly.
He
One of the
played
two
here.
played here, father coached here, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of a very interesting nexus.
And he's got JMU. You cooking? I don't
Well,
know.
some they're gonna freaking sue the NCAA today, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
I mean, if
It would
you've
be
got
nice.
a coach,
I hope they win. I hope they
Me
win.
too. I hope they
Gosh.
disband the NCAA because of the lawsuit.
Jeez.
yeah. What do you got, Chad? Looks like you got papers and
I
stuff.
got
He's got top 30 candidates over here.
Yes, it's the top 30 assistant coaches to.
Oh, so this is officially assistant. Okay, so
these are all assistant coaches.
Can I ask a qualifying question first?
Sure.
Have any of these assistant coaches been head coaches?
Well, I haven't read every single one of them.
No worries. Let's get into it. Let's see who's on here.
Well, this one was intriguing, and I mentioned it, I think, in our text messages earlier this week. Brian Hartline from Ohio State. This small little paragraph mentions West Virginia as head coaching if the job comes open. He's the offensive coordinator for Ohio State. It's got Gibby on here as well.
What number? Are they in any particular order?
I'm going to guess probably just going from the names of these.
Okay.
It's got Brian Hartline on 7. It's got Gibby at 13 out of 30.
Okay. Well, who's number 1?
The
Kirby Smart's
Garrett Riley.
Garrett Riley,
offensive coordinator at Clemson.
Okay. Is that Lincoln's brother?
I don't know.
I bet there's some relations there.
It is.
Okay. All right.
It is.
Okay. Here's what concerns me about Clemson. If they don't have the best quarterback if they don't have a generational quarterback, it doesn't seem like they do real great.
They've dropped off quite a bit.
They've been solid, obviously, but like remember whenever they had Taj Boyd. Whenever he was a solid quarterback, but not like a generational quarterback. We beat him in the Orange Bowl.
On our team.
Yeah, but we got Gino that we made out on that deal.
How about this, real quick? You're talking about Taj Boyd. Do you remember how close we were to
Tyler Boyd?
No, was it Terrell Pryor?
Oh yeah,
before Rich left.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly, he was a lock.
Yeah, that's right.
He was a lock to come to WVU, and then when Rich left, that's when he made a commitment to.
Didn't he get in trouble for tattoos?
That Maurice Claret did. I don't know if he did.
Was that the class? I mean, or somebody at Ohio State, they were getting tattoos for free or something.
Yeah, I think it was those guys, wasn't it?
Was Denard? I'm trying to remember. Was Denard committed prior to that too? Because I feel like he was in the mix too, right? From a WVU standpoint, potentially.
Not sure about that one.
I don't remember.
But I mean, at the time, you got to think our 3-year record was like tied
10
with,
wins
I
a
think,
season.
like USC we were like top 3. I think it was like us, USC, and Boise State over a 3-year stretch. And so, I mean, we're one of the hottest teams in the country. So it's definitely not far-fetched to get, the top overall recruit at that point. But
Well, you're talking about the glory days. What about Rich? He's at Jackson. He's waiting to make another move. Like, Rich is going to return to the Power 5.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah, definitely.
The question is, does he return as a coordinator or as a head coach?
I think as a head coach.
I think
he was
coach.
already a coordinator.
Yeah, he was at Ole Miss.
Well, I think he'd still be there. I mean,
if he wanted to be a coordinator, he'd still probably be a coordinator.
Well,
probably.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, it's just like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like we were talking when I first got on here with you guys, that you could win, you could have Urban Meyer seasons and then go to another team and it just not transfer. You may not have that same success. And that's, that's the variable that we have to look at. You can say this guy's got checks all the boxes, but he's still, the bottom line is he's got to win.
I texted y'all this, and this is not like that I think, this guy should be under consideration. It's like one of those like, oh, I forgot about that guy. Charlie Strong sitting on Saban's staff right now as an analyst, and you're just kind of like,
good God.
Dude, that's it. Like between Louisville, right? And then like he was, I can't remember, was he was kind of Texas's first shot, right? At like, was that right after Mac Brown?
Yes.
Well, was he not at, did he go to USF after Texas?
USF after that? And then I think, I don't know if I think he just resigned at the tail end of USF.
Okay.
Good God. And now he's now he's reviewing tape for Nick Saban.
What? Dude, Nick, I'll tell you what, you just go to you go to Alabama's like football website and look at their football staff, and then you scroll down through the bottom and it's like the island of misfit toys of like former head coaches that are now analysts.
He gets them back in the game, it seems.
That's
like,
right.
After,
I mean, Sark, man,
it's a smart play from Charlie Strong, because I mean, Saban loses his defensive coordinator pretty much every single year to a head coaching job. So
look at Lane Kiffin. He he literally shit on Tennessee. Like how would anybody want to hire this guy again? And then he steps down to he gets fired from USC first.
He gets humbled. That's right.
Yeah, he got humbled, and then
goes to Bama.
Goes to Bama. Nick Saban gets him back on the horse.
Mm-hmm. He started as an analyst. He brought him in as like an analyst, and then next thing you know, he's the offensive coordinator. And now he's the head coach of the Rebels. I mean,
and they're in it every. I mean, they're not like top 10, but they're in the top 15. It seems like every year they're doing all right.
And then Sarkisian, I mean, he righted his ship, got him to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man.
I USC literally coach. What was his name? Clay. Was it Clay Helton or something? What was his name?
That's who Hayden fired, right?
Yeah. Is he?
There is a lot of that. Well, the Fuente, right? Like, because when I was looking at that, his name came up. Justin Fuente, who was he was Memphis, right? Remember when Memphis was like reeling it up? Yeah. He was the next Power 5 guy. Then he went to Virginia Tech, kind of didn't really have, I think he had some decent success initially, but then it kind of trailed off. But I think, where is he at now? He's probably at Alabama too.
Alabama analyst, a graduate assistant. He's got a graduate assistant. They've got him in one of those slots at Alabama.
Yeah. Bronco Mendenhall, Dylan.
Yeah.
That guy.
So, okay, why did he resign from wherever he went after BYU?
He was at Virginia, and he just kind of stepped away. I mean, they didn't have a good year, but it also wasn't like, from I think all
I don't.
accounts, he
I
wasn't
don't.
going to be fired. You know what I mean? I mean, it's
Yeah.
Virginia.
I don't think that's a cultural fit here, man. I really don't. I think.
Yeah.
I think. No, I don't.
Can
I
you
don't
let
think
me
that
ask
would
you
work
this?
well.
Is there anybody, and usually you would say no, right? I think typically, because, and it's maybe even more now, right? Because there's so much parity now, and everything would be deemed a lateral move. But is there somebody out there at a Power Five job currently as a head coach that you think West Virginia could woo away from their current
Mm.
position that we would be interested in? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of folks would be interested in, but totally unrealistically, would they leave their current position for West Virginia? But is there anybody at one of these schools that might?
Oh man. Not that comes to mind off the top of my head.
I mean, you obviously have to have ties, right?
Maybe, but I mean, you got to think. Granted, it's a terrible example because it's not like. But if you're like coaching Vandy, like yeah, you're in the SEC, but like you're at Vandy. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's schools like that, right? And all these conferences that are kind of the doormats.
What about? I mean, here's one for you. Oregon State's head coach. They're not going to be in a Power Five anymore. Are they going to go independent? What are they going to do?
Yeah, same for Washington
Uh,
State. I mean, I don't know about
yeah,
their, but right, like
but
that's what I'm
Oregon
saying.
State's rolling. Like,
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's his alma mater. Oregon State's coach. I'm pretty sure that's his alma mater. Like, he really wants to stay there. But I think what I'm saying there is maybe that scenario doesn't play out. But there are Power Five coaches out there that, yeah, you could possibly see West Virginia being an upgrade for them. For sure.
Yeah, that's and again, not just curious, right? To think about whether or not that's something we're not thinking about. I mean, this is all comical, right? Because I'm sure at the end of the day that Ren Baker's got his short list, right, of folks that
Yeah.
he's been preparing for this literally from day one of this job.
Okay, so let's think about it from Ren's perspective. I think from Ren's perspective, he's either like all in on Rich or it's not. Rich doesn't even get a phone call. I don't think there's any in between. So I'd say from Ren's perspective, Rich probably is not going to be a candidate. If he fired Neal Brown and it was a legitimate job search, I don't think that Rich would be a candidate personally. Not saying that's right.
That would, dude, you would have to have the biggest set of balls to do that, right? Like in his position to hire him. Yeah. Or maybe even interview him.
Out.
I mean, the minute that the news breaks, right, that like we're interviewing him, I mean, it would be, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to know where the split is, because certainly the vocal portion of the fan base would be up in arms. But is that the majority, or is it like 50-50? I mean, I think we're all, big fans, and I think I wouldn't be upset about an interview or necessarily a hire. But
yeah,
I think the misinformed people would be up in arms, but there's, there's a lot of people like you and I that would be open to, at this point, why not? Let's just see what happens. But
dude, nobody would care the moment he won 10 games. Oh, nobody cares,
right?
At all about anything.
The moment that his offense hit the field and we looked like we were playing with tempo and we had a little bit of swag, which might not be year one, by the way. It might be like year 2, year 3, but like the moment that that his offense was back on Mountaineer Field and people were recognizing it all would be forgiven.
Everybody loves a redemption story, right? I mean, legitimately, people love the fall from grace and then the pick back up. And you couldn't write a story more poetic in nature if it happened and he had enormous success. But I'm not advocating for that. I'm just
Bobby Petrino, man. He left Louisville in a shitty situation, and then he came back. He didn't have any success there, but he came back.
yeah. There's somebody else that's done that recently too, right? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So the more as we talk through this, guys, where I'm kind of landing is like I think we are either in for another year Neal Brown or Jimbo Fisher.
Mac, let me ask you this. I got one for you because this is probably like comparable, and it's in conference. Matt Campbell. I'm not saying like we'd want, but I'm saying, do you think of Matt Campbell, right? If WVU picks up the phone, gives a call, is he interested?
No, here's one
in-
better. Kansas. Kansas is head coach.
Yeah.
And I would be interested in that one, 100%. We're an upgrade. Like, please, Neal Brown has not destroyed us to the point where we're not an upgrade.
I don't know,
Kansas.
man. They've had more success than us the past 5 years, I think.
Please. Okay. If that's true, then you just sealed the case for Neal Brown's gotta go. If we're no longer an upgrade over Kansas, Neal Brown's gotta go. But yeah, no, Matt Campbell, like, doesn't excite me that much, but I would take Kansas as head coach in a second.
Yeah. I'm just saying, there's a lot of guys, right, that I could see potentially being interested. Again, like you said, where are we right now in the state of affairs? And not just about kind of what damage has been done over the past 5 years, but more about what footing are we on, what foundation are we on to compete in this new environment, right, with transfer portal and NIL. Because I think that would be, if I'm a coach, right, and someone's calling me, I mean, that's what I want to know. Like, what's, you're asking me what my plan is. I'm asking you, what's your plan? Trust, like, what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah.
That dude's got a crazy head coaching record.
The Kansas coach?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's legit.
6 NCAA Division III championships. I mean,
what's Mark Mangino doing these days?
Hey, Ryan, to answer your question, Justin Fuente is an analyst for Indiana right now.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Indiana.
That coaching tree.
The old Hoosiers.
Yeah.
The old Hoosiers.
I don't know. I think I don't know. I think you got to give Tony a shot, like, big time. And I know we're, like, kind of premature on this because we haven't fired him yet, but he's went how many seasons? And he still doesn't have, like, one of those big signature wins. I mean, Rich was in, year 2 when we knocked Virginia Tech off when they were 3, and we were unranked. He got that win under his belt pretty early.
I mean, honestly, the more I cannot.
I don't know how you keep him. I don't know how you
that's
keep him.
That's where I'm at too. That's literally where I'm at. And I told Dylan this before you hopped on, Chad, but I feel like if you do, it doesn't have anything to do with him and his performance. It has to do with the external factors of, like, what are the other, vacancies that are going to be filled, right? And where, how much are we going to have to pay him, at least this year, to not just kick it another year? What's it going to do to the recruiting class? Or, but I mean, I really feel like it's not going to be, he coached his way into another year. Like, did he?
No, I don't think so. But like you said, like, it's going to be external factors. But we've got multiple schools now. I mean, is this a year that there's going to be numerous coaching changes? So we're going to lose out to a lot of other schools. If UCLA fires Chip Kelly, that's a Big Ten school opening. If you got Texas A&M, I mean, that's a couple right off the bat, but
it's going to be the carousel, right? And
Are we looking at
what I can't stand is there's a lot of people. You read the articles, right? You talk about it, and I get this part of it, but it's like the argument for why we keep him is all about kind of what naturally happens when you transition to a new coach, right? Like, you're going to lose recruits, you're going to do this, you're going to do, like, yeah, but that's going to happen. Like, I just think we've seen enough to know he's not the guy. So whether that happens this offseason, that happens next offseason, it's going to happen. And so, like, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's get it going. Because it's like,
I think Jimbo is the only person who can force Rin in that direction. Personally, and like, that's what I'm saying. Like, as we've talked about this, I've gone more in that direction. Like, if you would ask me before tonight, like, I would say I'm not really feeling Jimbo right now. I'm kind of like, yeah, let's get Jimbo in here, because that means Neal Brown's not the coach next season. We've got a guy from West Virginia with West Virginia ties, has won a national championship, had success at Texas A&M, 45-25, has been a proven recruiter, an offensive guy. Dude, let's get Jimbo in here. I think Tony's one stop away from being our head coach. Chad.
Well,
I think that
Tony
he needs to go somewhere and be a head coach.
He's probably 50, close to 50. I don't know.
He doesn't look that old.
No,
he does not look that old.
No, he's got a baby face.
Mm.
I don't
think
know.
He needs to go somewhere and be a head coach.
You're probably not wrong there.
Okay.
But I think back to Jimbo, I feel like Jimbo, if we've got players that Neal Brown has recruited that could potentially help us, in the future, and I feel like there are some players on our team right now that show that ability. If you bring somebody like Jimbo Fisher in, you have a better chance of keeping those guys on your roster just from his name.
Yeah.
So you're not.
If I was Nico, I'd be like, hell yeah! Like,
right?
Where am I? Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry as much as like complete rebuild, but who knows though? Maybe
in
those
this
guys,
day and age with the transfer rules too and NIL, where complete rebuilds aren't as big of a problem.
No, I mean that's the
they're
thing,
not that
dude.
big of a problem.
Yeah, look, and granted, we don't have the money, right? And that's a big issue, I don't think, to compete. And granted, it's not been a huge success, but it hasn't been a failure. Like Dion literally flipped the entire roster of the Buffs. I mean, and they're probably, I think they're going to have to scrap, right, to try to make bowl eligibility, but he did it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. And at that point, if he goes 6-6, like,
that's a success.
That's Neal Brown. That's
right.
Neal Brown's 5-year tenure. We're talking about year one of a flipped roster. Come on, man.
Yeah. I don't know.
I've seen enough.
It's like you can't
do it.
You can get Jimbo at a discount right now. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
We're not going to pay him $6 million a year. I know he's making more than that at A&M, but we're not like. I don't even know if we'd pay him $5 million a year right now. I don't know. Maybe we would. What's the Country Roads Trust? I've heard stuff that we are like top 10 in
money raised.
Yeah, is that true?
I don't know.
Are they holding out on us?
It doesn't sound true. It doesn't sound true.
It doesn't. I don't even know where you look that up at.
I don't know.
I feel like I saw a post.
Well, and that's what's so weird about this. Imagine if we are. I hope we're not in the top 10 as far as payouts. If we are in the top, if our team, the WVU Mountaineer football team, is in the top 10 payouts, there's more money on that field, or at least in the top 10. What is going on there? If you were a pro team doing that, you'd be called the Raiders.
This is and I don't know, I'm just looking at some statistics and articles. This is when they did a kind of a ranking, if you will, of NIL earnings per player for the Big 12. And this was in 2022. We were number 1.
Oh, God.
This cannot be true.
Please tell me that's
now,
not
to be
true.
fair, it's the new Big 12, so they've already pulled out Texas and Oklahoma, and it's kind of the remainder, if you will.
Is that factoring in like all sports or just football?
Let's see. For high school and college. It's the value that an athlete has completed to date. It rather signifies an athlete's value at a specific. Yeah, it's garbage. This is like junk science. I'm not going to put any credibility towards that. I mean, listen, we don't even have we just know that we can't, right? It's the donor base. A&M literally just said it's cool. Let's just go ahead and pay him $77 million to leave. Good God.
Yeah.
And the crazy number on that, did you see? Because I saw today someone actually pulled all the numbers together, right? Because 77 was just Jimbo. That wasn't his staff. Yeah. And that doesn't include what they'll have to pay presumably a new staff.
Yeah, they were saying close to $150 million. $150 million.
Yeah, and I think they
That's
signed a check
like I said, that's criminal.
Yeah, from
That's
like
borderline criminal.
It honestly is though, right? I mean, let's talk about how just stupid we are now. Like just as a society that is a transaction that nobody we're all like, yeah, that's reasonable. Like
Right.
that money could be going elsewhere, right? Anywhere elsewhere. It could be going to students, it could be going to charity, it could be going to all kinds of wonderful things. Don't get me wrong, I know the university makes a ton of money off football, and that's the basis for it. But man, that is just insane territory we're creeping into.
The contracts should not exist that are that lopsided. I'm sorry, they shouldn't exist like that.
Well, that's why I'm saying they need to put stipulations in that if you do not, exceed X amount of wins,
right?
Yeah, then you get docked, bro.
Well, what's insane is was it 2021? I think it was 2021. They just extended Jimbo.
Yeah.
Because that was when LSU, right? Like Orgeron was getting let go. All the musings were that Jimbo was going to go to LSU and be the coach, and they put an extension in front of him and locked it in. That was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Well, this says the top 10 NIL collectives in college football according to On3. We are 10th.
Jeez.
It's Ole Miss, Arkansas, USC, Florida State, Miami, Texas, Oregon, Texas A&M, Tennessee.
No Alabama on there. So it must just come from private donors. It's not part of a trust, like a collective.
Well, I don't know about all that backdoor stuff.
Good God.
So, okay, say that's the case. We're rich. Let's buy some stuff. Why can't we pay somebody?
Yeah.
We just to sit on it?
Yeah.
For a rainy day
maybe,
or what?
Maybe that's a deciding factor for Jimbo. I think you're right, Ryan. Like if you're a coach coming here, you're looking at that. You're saying, how much money am I going to have for my roster next year? So a top 10
that's the new assessment, right? I mean, it used to be, okay, what's your recruiting ground? What's your ties? Like, what can you do with your roster? Now it's like, how much money you have, right? I mean, legit, like how much money can we bring in to put players on the roster?
And we earned that under Neal Brown's tenure. Imagine if we win some ball game, what that's going to go up to. Good God. And the people of West Virginia are the salt of the earth.
You've got some money when you look at what we did in the portal on the basketball side of it, right? I mean, especially prior to the defections. I mean, those were like what 3 of the top, transfer targets like that we got.
Yeah.
In those 2-year span. I mean, that's NIL money for sure.
That's awesome. I hope that continues. I just hope that we get a coach in here that can do something with it.
Dude, I just hope, and this is a sad state, I would never root against the Mountaineers. I want them to win. I want them to win the next 2 games. But if we lost both games, I wouldn't be terribly upset because in my, my mind, like that is the nail in the coffin, right? Then we're not even debating anymore. And honestly, I wouldn't even say next 2 games. Like you drop one of those next 2 games.
If you lose to Cincinnati, if we lose to Cincinnati and Ren Baker does not fire Neal Brown, my angst will start turning towards Ren Baker. It will.
Well, I mean, I know I've said it before, but he 8-4 looks good on paper, but whenever you don't have none of those wins include any upsets against, what did I say the other day? We haven't won a top 25 game.
We haven't been ranked. We have not been ranked.
No. We haven't beat a top 25 team.
We also have not been ranked
at all.
One time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. But it was, 3 years ago? 2 years ago. Was it Kansas State, I think?
And I think we've only beaten one. No, surely. No. Yeah. Have we only beaten one top 25 team?
In the last
Neal Brown's tenure?
No, 4. He's had 4, but there hasn't been one for two seasons.
Guys, we got to do something
dude.
here.
It's like we can talk ourselves in circles, but like at the end of the day, everybody
He ain't
should
it.
know it
He
is
ain't
gone.
it.
It's done. He's just not it. And I think honestly, I got a lot of faith in Ren Baker, legit, to do the right thing, because at
What are
the
you
end of
going
the
to do if he
day,
doesn't do the right thing? What if he hires somebody that you're like, God damn it?
not even hires. I mean, if he's hiring, he's already done the right thing in my mind, right? Because the thing that he could do that would really just piss me off is maintain this bullshit and bring him back for another year. And I know, like, we talked about all the reasons why he would, and even just from his perspective, but I mean, man, it is just like Groundhog Day here.
What if
You
he
know what I mean?
hired Dave Wanstad?
You know, with this 8-4, if we go 8-4,
The stash.
the stash. If we go 8-4, this would remind me. I'm trying to think which would be more disappointing. I think maybe back then it was that, but it would remind me of like when Bill Stewart went 8-4, right? Because it was like the most unsatisfying ever. I mean, you came back,
Yeah.
and granted, we don't have that loaded team, but we have a really terrible, shitty schedule right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are we going to come out with? One, if you count Duquesne, 2 wins over a team with a
It
winning
depends.
record this season.
Yeah.
It's possible. I believe it's possible for us to finish, if you exclude Duquesne, with no wins against a winning record, a team above 500.
Which is unbelievable. Like, I don't even know how you can do that. That's pretty amazing. Like, just statistically, that you can play teams that nothing but teams that had losing records that many times to get yourself 8 wins.
Well, I
And we
mean,
lost to Houston. The only game on our schedule against a bad team that we still had to beat, we lost.
Yep.
Like the only game that mattered this season that wasn't like a good quality team, we lost.
but
Indeed,
He's not
we
it.
did.
He's not it.
how?
There's something wrong with this program under his leadership. That's just all I can say.
Listen,
Just the
he
climb,
probably,
baby.
yeah, he started the season knowing that he had, to fight for his job. He had to coach for his job, and it could not. I mean, other than that loss to Houston, it was setting up for him to be like, all right, it's Brucey's time to shine.
Perfect. That's right.
And then he goes to Oklahoma and lays an egg.
Yeah.
That was his time to shine, and he did not shine.
He did not.
He did not shine.
He hasn't
Right.
shined.
I'm going to read. Dylan already heard one of these, Chad, but I was also complaining. This is just me. I'm really just obviously see where I'm at. I'm not mentally well about the current state of affairs. And the prospect of him coaching another year is going to push me over the edge, I think, honestly. But his constant complaining post-game interviews at the losses about officiating, just random things. And he did it last week after we got the shit beat out of us, 59-20. And then he's like, I'm pretty sure we got in there on first down at the goal line. And, I'd like to, where's the camera angle? I want to see the camera angle. And it's I don't think that make or break us there. I hear you. Also, not a big fan of the 4 consecutive play calls there. Let's not talk about that in the execution. Let's bitch about the angle of a camera not having it.
Right.
Yeah, he's not it. He's not it.
Oh, here. I'm going to give you one sentence from each one. This is post-game interview, Okie State loss. Okay. This comes up in it. He says, he's talking about OG running for, 150 yards in the fourth quarter. Then he says, I thought our offense really competed, got us back into it. On that last drive, I thought we clearly got interfered with. He's talking about on Cole Taylor. He says on the first day upon there, I'll have to get explanation on that one. But I thought we'd score there and kick it again and see what we had. What? How about we stop guy from running football 150 yards, in the fourth quarter? Just unbelievable. Then this is one where he says, this is U of H, I think. And he says, we had 8 penalties. I don't know how the game was officiated. I'm not criticizing them because we didn't play very well. And then that's when, but it's like you say you're not criticizing them, but you're bringing it up. It's like there's always some bullshit excuse that he just kind of weaves in there.
Yeah, it's almost like don't look over here. Look over here for a second. I want to, draw the attention away from what really happened, and then make you guys think something else. And everybody's like probably sitting in that room going, I don't think so, Coach. I don't think that's what happened out there.
Well, then this is the most telling part for me, Dylan, because I think this is like you're entirely right about his mentality from a coaching perspective, from like an insecurity perspective. Now he's like projecting that outwardly, I think, because this is in his post-game press conference after getting the crap beat out by Oklahoma. He proceeds to talk about the entirety of the season. Like, it's clear this dude is like actively arguing for his job, right? Like continued employment. This is in his press conference. He says, I can promise you this, that won't be how we finish. We've had 9 games. We played football at a pretty high level, even the games we lost. Penn State, competitive one-score game going into the fourth quarter. Lose on a Hail Mary, and then up in the fourth quarter against Oklahoma State. And all that, we played pretty sound football. Looks like a well-coached unit and played and competed. And I don't want to get into it, so I'll watch the tape.
The lead story out of the Penn State game was that they ran the score up and that goes around. That was in his press conference.
Yeah.
He had to say in his press conference after the Penn State game that goes around when people run the score up.
Yeah. Well, it's going to go around.
You can say competitive all you want, but we were the press conference was about them running the score up on us.
Yes, that's what I'm like. And why are we even? What like? You could talk about. Here's the thing. You should come out of that press conference and be like, we just got the shit beat out of us. Like, we were terrible. Like, that's on me. That's on them. He says, and this is the thing that really drives me crazy about him. He says, I'm pissed off. And quite frankly, I'm nearly embarrassed. Nearly? You're nearly embarrassed? Like, what would make you embarrassed then? Because I'm not sure. I want to know where that lies if you're nearly embarrassed after that. I can't do it, boys. I'm done.
Yeah.
Got to give him the hook. Got to give him the hook. Ren Baker, I will get that guy the nicest Christmas gift.
Dude, I will sign up for the Country Roads Trust let's
go the Bernie Sanders route, like you said last week. Let's call everyone we know and say,
$5 a month.
I talked to everybody. We're going to all chip in $5. The contingent on you got to fire Neal Brown, man.
Yep. We could pay his buyout. If everybody in West Virginia throws in $5,
we could probably pay.
It'd be pretty close to his buyout.
I don't think it would.
I think there's under 2 million people in West Virginia, isn't there?
It's not even close.
I don't know. I think we got 3, don't we? But no kids are going to have $5.
In the West, the latest census, which was what?
No, you're right, Dylan. It's
1.783.
Yeah.
So no, it would not pay his buyout.
It wouldn't even get close to paying his buyout.
So $10.
Halfway. Yeah, we're gonna have to bump it. 20,
so
guys.
We're
20.
calling Ken Kendrick.
Yeah.
To bail us out.
And he's like, what more can I do? I'm like, somebody else has got to step up here.
At what point do we call Jimbo and be like, hey, listen, we know you're not going to coach here, but you are from West Virginia. Would you think about donating to the Country Roads Trust with that money you got?
Like a 1 month payment. One month payment.
Be like, listen, man, I know you need some special tax treatment. We got a great plan for you. You're just going to funnel some money in here.
Oh. All right, boys, I got to run.
Yeah,
you guys okay? Okay. It was fun. Well, I mean, let's throw out score predictions for Cincinnati real quick.
It better be a beatdown. I mean, just an absolute beatdown.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's gonna be. I mean, I really don't think it's gonna be.
I'm gonna say we win, but like
I said 38-24. You say 28-24 us?
Or 38-24
38-24. Okay. I'm gonna say 28 23 us. But
Ooh.
again, here's the asterisk I'll throw in there. If Cincinnati doesn't turn the ball over 2 times, we
They'll
lose
win.
that game.
Yeah, they can win the game.
If they have less than 2 turnovers, we lose that game. That's what I'm predicting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not super excited about it. I'll go 35-28. I think that's what I said last week. I'm going to stick with it.
All right.
All right, fellas, take it easy.
We'll see what happens. Yep. Thanks everybody for hanging out. We'll see you on the next one.
Adios.